Margo Whitmore had spent 35 years guiding students through the labyrinth of literature, crafting minds that could decipher Shakespearean tragedies and untangle the intricate satire of Orwell. But none of those years had prepared her for this, a 20-something store manager, grinning with condescension, explaining the modern retail approach as if she were a relic from another era. "This isn't a library, Margo," Josh Trenton said, arms crossed as he leaned against the bookstore counter. "Customers don't come here to browse dusty classics. They want quick recommendations, digital engagement, and, well, someone who understands current trends." Margo merely adjusted her reading glasses. "I see. And here I thought books weren't subject to expiration dates." Josh chuckled, but there was no warmth behind it. "We need fresh energy in here. People your age, no offense, sometimes struggle with tech. You should focus on restocking. Leave the customer interactions to the younger staff." She knew better than to react. Years of navigating high school faculty politics had taught her how to endure condescension without breaking character. So, she simply nodded, tucking away the insult for later, like a book placed back on the wrong shelf. "Understood," she said evenly, then turned toward the classics section, her true battleground. Josh didn't realize it yet, but he had just handed Margo a challenge. And if literature had taught her anything, it was that every antagonist eventually meets their downfall, often at the hands of the very person they underestimated. And so, her silent rebellion began. Margo didn't need a grand declaration of war. No raised voices, no formal complaints. That wasn't her style. Instead, she did what she had always done best: she used books to make her point. She started small. A casual "Oh, have you read this?" when customers browsed the store, strategically placing a well-loved classic into their hands. Fahrenheit 451 for the ones eyeing dystopian fiction. The Picture of Dorian Gray for those drawn to thrillers. She subtly altered the store's layout when Josh wasn't watching. The front display, once dominated by social media influencer recommendations, now showcased a rotation of literary greats, titles that had outlived generations of trends. And they sold. Oh, they sold. Within weeks, Margo tripled the store's sales in classics. Customers began seeking her out specifically for recommendations. And Josh noticed. One afternoon, he cornered her near the philosophy section, his polished dress shoes tapping impatiently against the hardwood floor. "What exactly is going on?" he demanded. Margo raised an eyebrow. "Clarify, Josh. I am but a humble bookseller, after all." He waved toward the register where two separate customers were purchasing old, irrelevant novels, ones he had pushed to clearance before Margo strategically resurrected them. "You're selling all this ancient literature," he said, exasperated. "But that's not our market." "Then why," Margo said, tilting her head, "is it working?" Josh opened his mouth, then shut it. That's when Margo knew she had him. Josh didn't like losing control. And Margo? She had spent her career navigating the egos of entitled administrators. This was nothing new. But this time, she wasn't playing defense. The changes were subtle, almost unnoticeable, unless, of course, you were looking. The bestsellers table? Now featuring books that had once been banned. The store's social media? Margo had suggested customer spotlights, where patrons shared their favorite classic novels. The staff recommendation shelf? Stacked with timeless literature disguised as new discoveries. Customers loved it. Josh? Not so much. One afternoon, he called an impromptu staff meeting. Margo leaned against the counter as he paced in front of the small break room. "We need to talk about our image," he began. Ah, there it was. The corporate buzzword he clung to like a lifeboat. Josh continued, waving his phone. "We're trying to appeal to a younger audience. These ancient books are not what they want." Margo exchanged a glance with her younger coworker, Elena, a part-time college student who had recently started gravitating toward Margo's recommendations. Elena hesitated, then spoke up. "But, they're selling." Josh ignored her. His gaze settled on Margo instead. I need you to get with the program. We push what the company wants us to push. Not, whatever this is. By this, Margo mused, you mean, literature? Josh's jaw tensed. I mean books that are controversial. Books that, let's be honest, corporate wouldn't exactly approve of. Ah. So that was it. The banned books. The classics. The stories that had survived generations of attempted censorship. Margo folded her arms, her voice cool. And what books, exactly, are making corporate nervous, Josh? His silence was answer enough. So they wanted to control the narrative. Fine. Let's give them something to talk about. Margo didn't argue with Josh that day. She didn't roll her eyes or tell him he was drowning in corporate nonsense. She just smiled. And that was how he should have known he was already losing. Because Margo didn't fight battles like this. She outmaneuvered them. The store's weekly book club night had always been a small, quiet affair, 5 or 6 customers gathered in the back, sipping tea and discussing whatever corporate-approved novel had been chosen that month. But after Josh's little warning, Margo decided it was time for a rebrand. She didn't advertise it. She simply started slipping titles into conversations. Into book recommendations. Into casual chats with customers. Oh, you love dystopian fiction? You should check out 1984, oh, you haven't read it? Well, that's what we're talking about next week. Looking for something thought-provoking? The Handmaid's Tale has been causing quite the stir lately. We'll be discussing it soon. Brave New World? That book changed my life. In fact, it's on the list for our next club meeting. It started with 6 people. Then 12. Then 20. Before long, they were bringing in chairs from the cafe. Josh? He barely noticed. He was too busy fiddling with digital sales reports, trying to impress corporate with SEO-driven book selections and data metrics. Meanwhile, Margo was turning his store into a quiet revolution. The customers weren't just buying books anymore. They were discussing them. Questioning them. And, most dangerously of all, they were engaging. Josh didn't see it coming. But corporate did. And the email that landed in his inbox one Monday morning? Well, that was when things really started to get interesting. Josh's face went pale as he read the email. Corporate wasn't happy. Apparently, someone had tipped them off that the store's trendy, youth-focused branding had been compromised by unauthorized literary discussions, and worse, the books in question were ones deemed controversial by certain regions. Josh stormed onto the sales floor, gripping his tablet like a lifeline. Margo. My office. Now. She followed him, perfectly calm, as if she hadn't just turned his store into a quiet act of rebellion. Josh slammed the door. Do you have any idea what you've done? Corporate is breathing down my neck. They think I've lost control of the store. Margo folded her hands neatly. Have you? This is serious. He jabbed at his screen. This banned book club thing? You didn't get approval. You didn't run it through the system. And now I have to explain why our store is, he gestured wildly, a political battleground? Margo tilted her head. Josh, it's a book club. It's a book club that's gaining traction online. He turned the screen toward her. Some blogger wrote about it. It's trending. People are talking about how a small bookstore is fighting back against censorship. Margo barely blinked. How wonderful. Not wonderful. Josh ran a hand through his hair. Corporate thinks I planned this. They want me to shut it down before we get bad press. Margo sat back in her chair. Bad press, she echoed. Josh hesitated. The thing about bad press is that, well, it isn't always bad press. And judging by the sharp glint in Margo's eyes, she knew it too. By noon, the story had spread beyond the bookstore walls. Local newspapers picked it up. then regional ones. By evening, #banned book club was trending. Not just in their city. Nationwide. And corporate? They panicked. They weren't about to be the company shutting down a book club in the middle of a national debate about censorship. So instead of disciplining Josh, they turned him into a hero. The company's official account released a statement about championing the power of literature and how their stores have always been safe havens for intellectual discussion. They framed Josh as a progressive manager who understood the importance of literary freedom. And just like that, the corporate machine took credit for everything Margo had built. Margo watched it happen with a mix of amusement and exasperation. Of course. Of course. But she wasn't angry. Because she hadn't done this for credit. She'd done it because books deserved to be read. And now? More people were reading them than ever. 2 months later, Margo sat in her favorite spot, the worn leather armchair near the back of the bookstore, surrounded by shelves overflowing with stories that had outlived centuries of censorship, revolutions, and regimes. She sipped her tea as the familiar chime of the store's front door rang, signaling another wave of customers drawn in by the viral phenomenon the store had become. The banned book club had tripled in size. Some nights, the store had to turn people away because there weren't enough seats. High school students debated the meaning of The Catcher in the Rye, retirees reminisced about reading 1984 for the first time, and parents clutched well-worn copies of To Kill a Mockingbird, eager to pass them down to their children. The store had transformed into something far greater than just a business, it was a cultural hub. And the most amusing part? Josh now embraced the chaos. Margo watched as he guided a journalist through the store, explaining how literature should challenge us and stories shape the world. Oh, how far he'd come. She smirked into her tea. Perhaps he'd learned something after all. As he passed by, he caught her watching and sighed. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he muttered. Margo arched an eyebrow. "Immensely." He exhaled and rubbed his temples. "Just, don't start another rebellion, okay?" She set down her cup, leaning forward ever so slightly. "Josh, I taught literature for 30 years. Rebellion is the foundation of every great story." He groaned. But he was smiling. Margo thought about how much had changed in just a few months. She no longer felt like a retired teacher trying to find her place in a world that had moved on without her. Instead, she had carved out a space where her knowledge, wit, and stubborn defiance had not only been useful but transformative. She had weaponized literature in the best way possible, by making people think. And, in the process, she had rewritten her own story. As the evening sun cast golden light through the bookstore windows, a young woman approached her, clutching a copy of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. She hesitated, then smiled nervously. "Ms. Whitmore," she said softly. Margo looked up. "Yes, dear? I just wanted to thank you. I came to the book club a few weeks ago, and it made me realize how much I love literature. I signed up for an English lit class at the community college." Margo blinked. Then she smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "That's wonderful." The young woman nodded. "I was afraid it was too late to go back to school, but, listening to you talk about these books, the way you make them come alive, it made me realize, maybe it's not too late for me either." Margo grinned. "My dear, if there's one thing I can promise you, it's that it's never too late." As the young woman walked away, Margo sat back in her chair, a quiet satisfaction settling over her. The battle had been won. The books had survived. But more importantly, new voices had been awakened. And that was enough. At its heart, this story is about resilience, reinvention, and the power of standing up for what truly matters. Margo's journey reminds us that experience is not obsolete, that wisdom is not outdated, and that sometimes, the best form of resistance is knowledge itself. She didn't fight with anger, she fought with literature. And in doing so, she didn't just change her workplace, she changed minds, inspired a movement, and proved that every generation has something valuable to offer. But what do you think? Did Margo handle things the right way? What do you think about the tension between experience and innovation in the workplace? Have you ever felt underestimated because of your age, background, or beliefs? We want to hear from you. Comment 2 if you loved Margo's story, or 7 if you didn't. Tell us why. Let's start a discussion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to EN True Tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story. This is Natalie, bringing you more thought-provoking, inspiring, and unforgettable stories every single day. See you in the next one.